Hi listener, welcome to a special bonus edition of Pratchat. As we sometimes do, we've had to delay our episode for August 2025. So instead of our planned episode about designing Discworld and Tiffany Aching's guide to being a witch, I am instead taking on a little tour of my Pratchett bookshelf. Now we will still bring you that episode about those two books hopefully later in August. Watch out for it in your podcast feed soon. But today, yes, there are some books on this bookshelf I just don't think we'll ever do a whole episode about. Probably not even a mini episode bigger than this one. So I thought I'd have a glance at it and talk to you about them. This is something I had actually been thinking about doing for ages, and I still plan to do a more detailed video version of this for our subscribers. But today I'm just going to talk about a few of these books that I don't think we'll do a full episode about. So let's have a look at what we've got here. So my Pratchett bookshelf's not that big. There are three shelves that are entirely devoted to Pratchett. They are full, I should say, and some of the books have had to go horizontally on top of the books, which are spine out in the normal way. But I've got them organized in what I think is a fairly logical fashion. The main series of Discworld novels comes first and is in sort of release order, which is a more or less chronological order, isn't it? There's only a couple of exceptions to that. And then I've got other Pratchett books after that in a variety of ways that make sense to me. So the Discworld ones, I think, we've nearly covered them all on the podcast at this stage. So they're pretty much done. And we will do all of them, all of the novels. And I'm just looking, at the end, when the novels run out, I've got sort of the bonus things. So first of all, I've got the Science of Discworld books. We've already done all 4 of those. But then I've got some of the weirder Discworld spin-off stuff, some of which we have talked about. For example, we have talked about Where's My Cow? We have not yet talked about The World of Pooh. I don't know that we might do that one actually. And I've also got Mrs. Bradshaw's Handbook. So if you don't know, Where's My Cow, The World of Pooh, and Mrs. Bradshaw's Handbook are all books that were kind of tie-in books to a Discworld novel. So Where's My Cow is a tie-in to Thud. And we have done a little bonus episode about that with our friends from The Truth Shall Make You Fret. We have The World of Pooh, similarly. That's connected to Snuff, which we did recently. I think that'd be worth talking about that. It is a fun little book. And then there's Mrs. Bradshaw's Handbook, which is connected to Raising Steam, and it's kind of a guide to the railways on the Discworld. So I think there's a fair chance we might do those too, so I won't talk about those too much. We've got Nanny Ogg's Cookbook and the Almanac. We've talked about those. Now, these ones, I wanted to do an episode about these. I just don't know that it's going to happen, but I have got some of the Discworld maps. I don't have all of them. I still don't have the Lanka one. There's one called A Tourist Guide to Lanka, which I think would be a lot of fun. But I do have the other 3 original maps. The first 2 I bought when they first came out. So the Streets of Ankh-Morpork and the Discworld map. Maybe not when they first came out, but when they were still very much in print and you could find them in regular bookshops. And they're nice, there's a nice big map that folds out into a big poster that you can take out of the little sort of cover. And then there's also a little short booklet that sort of has a few words about the map and the creation of it, and then sort of a little key with key locations that appear on the map. Similarly, the Discworld map, very similar. And then I've also got the third one, which is Death's Domain, which I'm this is a great thing to do, isn't it? We are an incredibly visual podcast, but this is an illustration of what the place where death lives might look like. And so it's got his house in the middle. It's got the maze, the hedge maze, the beehives, and it's got all of the stuff. It's pretty great. I actually think there's still an outside chance we might do an episode about these maps, because I've also got the map books. So in addition to the individual maps, I'm still missing one of those, but we've got also the complete Ankh-Morpork and the complete Discworld Atlas, which are kind of updated maps in book form that go into a lot more detail. My idea for those was maybe we'd do an episode about all the maps together and talk about fantasy cartography. And I've got a couple of dream guests for that. So, look, that may or may not happen. We'll see how much time we have for bonus episodes. As you will know if you're a regular listener, we've had enough trouble getting the regular episodes together of late. So let's see. We'll see what we can do. But those are fun. Now, okay, this is one I don't think we'd ever do an episode about this. So this is the first art book. We're doing Designing Discworld in our next episode. This is the first Paul Kidby illustrated book, the Pratchett Portfolio. Now, I'm pretty sure this is the first one. And I bought this around, I think, the time when it first came out, which was 1996. Yeah, so I would have bought this when it first came out. And this is a pretty short art book. It's only, how many pages is that? Well, they're not even numbered, the pages, but it's not more than, 40 pages at the most? It's probably even less than that, but it's just sort of a little collection of very short character biographies accompanied by illustrations. And most of them are sort of black and white pencil illustrations. And then there's some color pieces as well. Now, some of the work in this book has gone on to be very well known. You will have seen these illustrations if you've seen any kind of Discworld calendar or collection of Discworld artwork. For example, the one of Rincewind running away from the things from the dungeon dimension, which are nightmarish creatures. They're really good. Then there's the one of all three of the original coven of Lanka witches on their brooms, with Granny in the middle, Margaret on the left, and Nanny on the right. Really great. I love that. And then there's lots of other ones. We've got one of the early illustrations of the Faculty of Unseen University. We've got Death on the motorcycle. We've got the guards from Guards, like the Night Watch from the Guards era. So it's just the four of them with a dragon in the background. You will have seen that illustration for sure. There's a great one. Oh, this is a great one of the Silver Horde. It's a portrait they've commissioned. And, there's a lot of other illustrations in here that Paul Kidby has done other versions of. Like he's sort of done a new illustration in a similar pose or made them more detailed. Anyway, that's a great book, but I don't think we'd ever do an episode about that. So that's a nice one to have. Now, I'm mindful too that I did ask our subscribers if they had any questions about this. Molokov did ask a couple, one of which was, what unique items do I have? Which is a good question. Molokov's a big Discworld fan, has been to a lot of the conventions over the years, so he's got a few pretty cool things, either through, fan auctions, or sometimes some of the big conventions used to give away some pretty amazing things to attendees. I don't know that I've got many unique things, really. Most of the things that I've got are commercially available things. I suppose that one of the rarer ones that I've got, I think you can still get it. I'm not sure if it's still in print, but when Mark Burrows did the biography, The Magic of Terry Pratchett, he also put together a sort of a second volume, like a small little companion book called Turtles All the Way Down, which has a bunch of extra stuff in it. Probably we won't have time for that. We do plan to do an episode about The Magic of Terry Pratchett at some point. Probably it'll be one of our last episodes. But it's a nice little book that's got the sort of longer interviews, some of the footnotes that got cut from the book. There's a little guide to the books that Terry Pratchett wrote. And it's a nice little extra bit. So that's good. That's probably the most unique thing that I've got. I think everything else I've got is, pretty commercially available. Although there are a couple of things that are a bit harder to find. So, I've got quite a few of the plays. This is something else we'll never do an episode about. I don't think they're quite, they're good adaptations. I've actually only got a few of them that I've remembered. I've only got 3, but one of them I actually did direct and perform, way back when I was at university, which was Mort. And I've also got Guards and Men-at-Arms, which are great. And these are the Corgi editions of those plays. I don't think they're still published by Corgi, so possibly can't get those anymore. You'd have to get whatever the current editions are. But I've also got a couple of the other plays. I've definitely got, I've got Johnny and the Dead, which is an Oxford Play Scripts one. And I thought I had another one. Sometimes there are some books that I have tracked down and then decided not to buy, and sometimes I can't remember which ones those are. But I think those are sort of the weirdest ones or hardest to get ones. All right, let's have a look. What else have we got here that we're not going to do an episode about? We kind of mentioned Dodger's Guide to London. That kind of goes in the same category as things like The World of Pooh and Where's My Cow. It's a little tie-in book, but it's an interesting one because it's a history book. It's like a sort of a kid's fun facts about London in the Victorian era book. I liked it. I read through it and it was a bit of fun. What else have we got here? One we have kind of done an episode about, but haven't really, is the Carpet People. So we did do, and we do plan to do an episode about the Carpet People. It'll primarily be about the version that's widely available, which is the rewritten version from the 90s. But I do have, very lucky to find, for a reasonable price, it was still a lot of money, but it was a reasonable price, a copy of the first edition of The Carpet People, Pratchett's first published novel. I've got it here. I'm holding it in my hot little hands right now. It's in pretty good condition. One downside, the cover has got plastic on it, but that's okay. It means it's in pretty good nick. And it does have a dust jacket, which a lot of the copies you find don't. It's an ex-library copy as far as I can tell, because it's clearly had the library bit torn out of the front of it. Oh, and it is also stamped, withdrawn and sold by Hereford something County Libraries. So somewhere in the UK, this was once in a library, and now it's in my library. And I have read it. I actually really like it. I think it's interesting. And we did do a special bonus episode for the local Discworld convention as an online treat. We did a little episode where we compared the two editions of The Carpet People. And they are quite different. So I think that's been published on YouTube. I'll put a link to that in the episode notes if you want to check it out. But we'll do a proper episode about The Carpet People, but probably not the original one, although we might mention that comparison. That's probably, it's certainly the most expensive book that I have. Now, we did do one about the diaries, or rather, we did one about the Ankh-Morpork archives. I've only got one of the diaries. I've got the first one. Not worth doing a separate episode just about that. And I do have 3 different editions of the Discworld Companion. I think we might do an episode about the Discworld Companion. I'm not really sure. But if we do, we'll just do one, and we'll talk about probably the Ultimate Edition. And then maybe we'll refer to anything interesting in the others. But I've got the Discworld Companion, the updated one. So not the new Discworld Companion, which came after this. I've got the Discworld Companion just with updated in the bottom corner. And that goes up to, I'm just looking inside it here, Hogfather. Yeah, so it's pretty early. And oh yeah, my copy's signed. There we go. I have a fair few Pratchett copies signed, and I can't always remember which ones they are because I don't take them out and look at them too much. But I went to see him as often as I could when he was still coming out. And so this says, "To Benjamin, in your heart, you know it's real." That's beautiful. It's signed in Sharpie, I think. Anyway, so I've got that, and it's got a little introduction. It's got all the entries. It's got some nice little, it's got some illustrations. I don't know who's done these illustrations actually, because they're not Paul Kidby ones. I wonder if they're, what does it say? It must say in here somewhere. Illustrations by Stephen Briggs. Yeah, okay. There's Stephen Briggs illustrations. So he's done things like illustrate the view of across the Ankh, or one of the bridges. There's the coats of arms of some of the guilds. There's a picture of a swamp dragon in here. There's lots of little, they're very cute. Oh, there's a great one of the collecting box outside the Sunshine Sanctuary for sick dragons. That's quite lovely. Okay, yeah, no, that's worth seeing. If you can get your hands on one of those, even if you just have a flick through the illustrations. Not that I don't like the Paul Kidby ones, they're amazing, but just something a bit different. The other edition that I've got, apart from the Ultimate one, is Turtle Recall, which was the final edition, I think, before the Ultimate one. I've got a hardcover version of that. That's got a few extras in it. I think in the back, it's the one within the back. It's got the rules for Cripple Mr. Onion that you can play with round world playing cards. So that might be worth looking at. But we wouldn't do a whole episode about those older editions of it. We might just mention them when we do the Ultimate one, because we also have the fancy Done Manifested edition of the Ultimate Discworld Companion, which has got extra material in it. Largely, I think the extra material is drawn from the Science of Discworld books, but I think there's some other stuff too. Here's one I missed. It's one of the ones sitting vertically on there. Oh, and I also missed one of the Discworld maps I've got. I have the more recent one, the Mapper Discworld, which if we do an episode about maps, we will include that because that's quite nice. So I won't talk about that too much, but that's the more recent map. You can still get that from the Discworld Emporium. But one thing I've got, which you might not be able to get anymore, is Mr. Bunsey Has an Adventure. This is an actual picture book. Actually, I haven't even unwrapped this because we kind of were thinking about doing an episode about it. I don't know that we will now. But it's a picture book, a real picture book that replicates the Mr. Bunsey adventure book, that replicates the Mr. Bunsey Has an Adventure book from the Amazing Morris film. So it's got the same style of art as used in the 2D animation that's used for those sequences in the film. And it's really cute. And it's published as if it's like a real book in the real world. So that's quite nice. I don't think, you know what, I haven't opened it, but it does have a review on the back from the Ankh-Morpork Times. It does not identify an author, so I'm not sure. That might, it kind of, I mean, it lives in the same kind of space as Where's My Cow, so yeah, I don't think we'll do an episode about that, but that's a fun one. Maybe we'll find a bonus episode about that. All right, so that's kind of the Discworld stuff. Let's get into the non-Discworld stuff.
Actually, that wasn't quite all of the Discworld stuff. Another thing I forgot, because it was horizontal on top of the other books, not vertical, as I said earlier, were all of the Discworld graphic novels, which I have managed to collect. So I've got Mort, the big comic, got the graphic novel adaptation of Guards, and there's also one of Small Gods, which is the most recent one, which are all pretty great. And I don't think we'll do an episode about them because they're just very faithful adaptations. And the main thing we'd have to talk about is the art, which on our famously very visual podcast probably won't be too exciting for you. So yeah, those are also some things that I've got on the shelf that we won't be doing an episode about. But if you'd really like us to, let me know.
There's not heaps. I've got all of the novels and some of the short story collections. I don't have all of the children's story collections. And actually something we haven't mentioned is there's some newer ones. So there were 4 original ones: Dragons at Crumbling Castle, Witch's Vacuum Cleaner, Father Christmas's Fake Beard, and The Time Traveling Caveman were the 4 original collections of his children's stories from when he was working at the newspaper. But there's a couple of later ones which I've forgotten what they're titled, but they're sort of, I think they're shorter collections, and possibly also I think they're published by Penguin rather than Doubleday. I'd have to check, but or Corgi. But there are new collections of these short stories, and I think they're kind of more thematically put together, because the original ones are a little bit sort of here's a bunch of stories, and they're named after one of the stories, but I think the new ones are a bit more thematically tight, a bit like the Father Christmas one, which is mostly Christmas-themed stories. I think the newer ones have a bit more of a theme to the stories that are collected in them. But there's no new stories in those. The only new ones have been in A Stroke of the Pen. So I've got some of those. We won't do episodes about those, but some of the stories in them are a lot of fun. They're worth a read. And particularly if you've got kids and you want to read stories to them and you're a big Pratchett fan, I'd recommend getting your hands on some of those short stories for kids collections. They're a lot of fun. Now, one thing I have started trying to get my hands on, but which isn't easy, or at least it's not cheap, are some of the academic works that have been written about Pratchett. I've only got one at the moment, and I thought I had a couple, but I've only got one, and that's because they are available at academic prices, most of them, which means that they are usually, $80 to $150 Australian at least. But most of them are collections of essays. There's a couple that are sort of like somebody's thesis turned into a book. But the one that I've got is one of the collections, and it's Terry Pratchett's Ethical Worlds, Essays on Identity and Narrative in Discworld and Beyond. I don't think we'd ever do an episode about one of these books in particular, but I can imagine we might do an episode, like a bonus one, about academic work about Pratchett, which would be a fun thing to do. Like if we could get some of the Pratchett scholars together to talk about their work and why they think, he particularly is a rich vein of research. But this one is all about the sort of ethics of Discworld and also some of his other books. So it's got essays about things like Pratchett's early science fiction. There's one about Conan the Barbarian. There's one about Carrot. There's one about the ethics of growing up in Pratchett's work. The Old English influences in The Wee Free Men and the Shepherd's Crown. So obviously that one's got spoilers, so I haven't read that one yet. Yeah, there's some great stuff in here. So those are a few things on the shelf. I think we've talked about most of the other things, or they're things that we will talk about. But I had a couple of other questions, so I will answer those before I wrap this up. Just coming back over to my desk. I have been recording this while standing at my bookshelf looking at it. I thought that authenticity was important. But Molokov did have another question. Any stuff you know exists that you'd really, really love, but is either too expensive or too rare or no longer available? I think the answer is yes. There is. I just alluded to the fact that some of the academic works are very expensive. Those ones I would like to get. And I think there's some of the things that have been given away at conventions. I've thought about maybe collecting those, but I'm not. It's interesting because I obviously I've got most of his books, but I'm mostly really interested in things of his that I won't be able to read otherwise. And a lot of the content of things like the folios that were given away at some of the early Discworld conventions, some of the stuff that's in those is pretty available. Like it's either in some of the short works collections or it was published online at some point. So yeah, I don't think there's a lot of stuff that I'm chasing. Yeah, and I've managed to get all the board games, so I feel like I've got the things I most wanted that were a bit difficult to get.
I nearly forgot one that did get away from me, which was the Knack McFeagle's Big Wee Alphabet book. This was a children's book of words published supposedly by the Knack McFeagle. It was actually published by the Discworld Emporium, and it came out after Pratchett's death, quite a while after, so there was no direct involvement with him. But it just looked like a lot of fun, and I thought it'd be a great excuse to do an episode all about the language of the Knack McFeagle, something which maybe I will still find time to do a bonus episode about. But the book is out of print, and I don't know that it's coming back anytime soon, so if we did decide we wanted to use it for that episode, we'd need to find a copy secondhand. If that's something you'd really like to hear us do, let us know.
Now, Ian also sent a question about this. Which Pratchett book means the most to you because of its associations with your life rather than the contents of its pages? That is such a good question. Oh, Ian. To answer that, I've got to get back to the bookshelf. I think there's a couple. I've got a first edition, or at least an early edition hardcover of Small Gods, which I don't actually remember where I found it, but it is important to me because it was one of the first edition of anythings that I bought. And Pratchett was like the only one, apart from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I have some early paperback editions of. So kind of the only thing that I was really looking out for was a couple of those early Pratchett books. And I think the ones that I remember, that one, that Small Gods, and, I'm quite sentimental about my original copies of some of the early books of his that I read too, like The Colour of Magic, which my mum bought for me. I've told that story on the podcast before. And some of the children's books as well, although I was quite disappointed to find some of them had gone missing over the years, and so I had to replace them. And I tried to get the same edition I originally had, but I do have my original copy of You Can Only Save Mankind and my original copy of Truckers, and I am sentimental about those. Those Corgi paperbacks, most of my copies, they're covered in Contact, which is like that sort of thin, transparent, sticky-backed vinyl to protect them. A lot of them have got very faded spines because in one or two of the houses I've lived, the bookshelf was in the sun, so the spines are a bit faded. I think I am really sentimental about those other early ones that I do have signed. So that copy of Small Gods is signed. I think I tended to try and get my favourite books signed and the ones that were a bit special. So I've got Small Gods signed, and there's a couple others I've got signed. Another one that I'm quite sentimental about is a friend of mine, dear friend of mine, Sally, who's been a guest on the podcast, bought me, she found it at a second-hand shop, a copy of the illustrated We Free Men, which I did mention when we were talking about the We Free Men. It's a beautiful book. It's a second-hand one. I don't think it's in print anymore, and the cover's a little discoloured, and it doesn't have a dust jacket, but it's a gorgeous book. And I am quite sentimental about that because it was such a lovely present, and I do love the illustrations in it. But yeah, I think that copy of Small Gods is probably the one I'm particularly sentimental about. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, look, I hope you've enjoyed this sort of little tour around some of the weirder bits of Pratchett stuff that I've got on my bookshelf. I might do, like I said, a bit of a video of this just so I can show some of these books, particularly some of the rarer ones, to subscribers. So have a look out for that sometime in the near future when I've got time to do this on video. It's a little bit more of a setup. But thank you for indulging this little bit of nonsense. I hope it's been fun for you. If there's any of those things I mentioned that you really, really want us to do an episode about, please let us know. You can contact us at chat@pratchatpodcast.com. And we'll be back later this month, hopefully, or certainly soon, with that episode about Tiffany Aking's Guide to Being a Witch and designing Discworld. That's sort of 2-for-1 episode, which will be our next one, which we're hoping to bring to you quite soon. And then hopefully we'll get back on track as we get towards the end of our time, because, this is the other reason I thought that now would be a good time to do this. There's just not that many things that we are going to do episodes about. But look, that's all from me, and we'll see you again soon. And until next time, maybe have a look at what's on your bookshelf and share it with us.